Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Carrolet Thomas, and welcome to my channel. Thank you to those of you who have subscribed to my channel. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Today's message is, do you recognize a narcissist when you see one? This is a prophetic word and prophetic warning from God. Narcissism is a trait that is found not only in people in the world, but as quiet as it is kept, it is also in people in the church. To be clear, let's look at what narcissism is. Narcissism is a personality style characterized by an excessive preoccupation with oneself, a strong sense of entitlement, and a constant need for admiration. Named after the mythological Greek figure Narcissus, who fell in love with his own reflection, it exists on a spectrum. The core traits, while everyone exhibits mild narcissistic traits occasionally, clinical narcissism revolves around specific behavioral patterns: grandiosity, an inflated sense of self-importance or superiority; need for admiration, constantly seeking validation and attention from others; lack of empathy, difficulty or unwillingness to recognize the feelings and needs of those around them. The two main types. Psychologists generally divide narcissism into two distinct flavors: grandiose narcissism, which is characterized by extroversion, dominance, and overt overconfidence. These individuals often seek power, status, and public recognition. Vulnerable narcissism, characterized by introversion, deep sensitivity to criticism, and highly fragile self-esteem. Individuals may exhibit hostility or play the victim when their expectations aren't met. Clinical versus casual use. In everyday conversation, narcissism is casually used to describe someone who seems boastful or self-centered. However, when these traits become extreme, inflexible, and damaging to daily life and relationships, it can be diagnosed by mental health professionals as narcissistic personality disorder, also known as NPD. I must admit, with me being a seer, a prophet who sees, I can see a narcissist with my eyes closed. What are the signs that someone is narcissistic? Narcissism exists on a spectrum, but a pattern of these 9 core traits, often seen in narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, can indicate the behavior: grandiosity, an inflated sense of self-importance. They frequently exaggerate achievements and expect to be recognized as superior without actual merit. Entitlement, an unreasonable expectation of favorable treatment or automatic compliance with their expectations. Need for admiration, an insatiable craving for excessive attention and constant validation. Lack of empathy, an unwillingness to recognize, understand, or care about the feelings and needs of others. Exploitive, exploit, exploitative behavior, exploitative behavior, taking advantage of others to achieve their own goals. Superiority, believing they are special or unique and can only be understood by or associate with other high status people. Envy, frequently envying others or believing that others are envious of them. Arrogance, displaying haughty, conceited behaviors, often by putting others down to reinforce their own superiority. Fragile ego, reacting to criticism or defeat with intense anger, shame, or attempts to belittle the other person. For a clinical diagnosis, a licensed professional evaluates the person using criteria from the diagnostic and statistical, excuse me, let me repeat that. For a clinical diagnosis, a licensed professional evaluates the person using criteria from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. What kind of childhood creates narcissism? Psychology points to two distinct childhood paths that often lead to narcissism: overevaluation and emotional neglect or trauma. In both cases, the environment fails to provide the child with a realistic, stable sense of self. First, the overvaluation path, and that's grandiose narcissism. When parents treat their child as superior to others, uniquely special, and entitled to privileges, the child internalizes this unrealistic view. The environment. Parents over-exaggerate the child's qualities and put them on a pedestal, shielding them from typical consequences or criticism. The result, the child develops an inflated sense of self-importance, a pervasive sense of entitlement, and an underlying belief that they are better than others. 2. The neglect and trauma path, which is vulnerable narcissism. When a child's emotional needs are ignored or consistently invalidated, they learn to view human connection and vulnerability as liabilities. The environment. The child grows up in an unpredictable environment marked by emotional neglect, abuse, or strict authoritarian control, demanding constant perfection. The result, to protect themselves from deep-seated shame, powerlessness, and emotional pain, the child develops a false self. This manifests as a defensive shell of superiority, deep emotional emptiness, and an insatiable hunger for validation. While environmental factors are significant, experts stress that narcissism develops from a complex mix of these early experiences, along with genetics and differences in brain structure. Now, let's look at some biblical aspects of narcissism. What does Jesus say about narcissism? While the clinical term narcissism is modern, Jesus directly addressed excessive selfishness, pride, and the toxic traits of narcissism through the Gospels. His teachings provide a framework for both identifying these behaviors and responding to them with wisdom. Identifying the traits. Jesus frequently exposed the hallmarks of narcissism, such as a craving for attention, hypocrisy, and a lack of empathy, often clashing with the religious elite of his day, the Pharisees. The pursuit of admiration. He warned against those who do good deeds simply to be seen and praised by others. And that's in Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. Hypocrisy and false images. Jesus famously compared hypocrites to whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but full of deceit and self-interest on the inside. And that's Matthew chapter 23, verses 27 through 28. Lack of empathy. He criticized leaders who placed heavy, burdensome rules on others while refusing to lift a finger to help them. And that's Matthew chapter 23, verse 4. The biblical antidote: humility and service. Jesus contrasted self-worship with the foundational pillars of his kingdom: humility, love, and service to others. The first shall be last. Jesus taught that true greatness comes through humility and serving others, rather than elevating oneself. And that's in Mark chapter 9, verse 35, and Matthew chapter 20, verses 26 through 28. Prioritizing others. The Apostle Paul, heavily influenced by Jesus' teachings, summarized this attitude by commanding followers to not only look to their own interests, but to value others above themselves. And that's Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 4. How Jesus handled toxic people. Jesus did not coddle or tolerate narcissistic manipulation. His approach to handling toxic individuals combined grace with unshakable boundaries. He confronted sin. Jesus did not back down from calling out manipulative or exploitative behavior, and that's in Matthew chapter 23. He refused to be manipulated. When dealing with crafty questions meant to trap or manipulate him, Jesus often responded with a piercing question of his own, walking away or refusing to engage in their power games. And that's Matthew chapter 21, verses 23 through 27. He set clear boundaries. In certain instances, Jesus walked away from crowds or individuals when their hearts were hardened, redirecting his energy toward those who were receptive. And that's Matthew chapter 13, verse 58. Guarding your own heart. The ultimate message of Jesus is to guard your own spirit when navigating these dynamics. He warned followers to beware of individuals who prioritize their own appetites over truth, and to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And that's in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. While followers are called to love, Jesus' example teaches that it is entirely biblical to set boundaries and protect yourself from toxic destruction. How did Jesus handle a narcissist? Jesus handled toxic, manipulative, or narcissistic individuals like the Pharisees by setting firm boundaries, offering calm, silent resistance, and speaking blunt truth without taking the bait. He guarded his heart, refused to be distracted from his mission, and walked away when people consistently rejected his message. How Jesus handled toxic people. He refused to argue. Jesus knew when someone wasn't looking for the truth, but just wanted to manipulate or prove themselves right. He followed the wisdom of Proverbs chapter 26, verse 4, to not answer a fool according to his folly. He utilized silence. When faced with relentless criticism or smear campaigns, Jesus frequently ignored the noise or answered with short, concise questions rather than engaging in a defensive rant. He called out the behavior. While he was compassionate toward the broken, Jesus did not coddle hypocrites. He directly confronted their manipulation, hypocrisy, and entitlement. For example, calling them whitewashed tombs. He separated forgiveness from access. Jesus practiced the principle that forgiving someone doesn't require giving them a platform to abuse or manipulate you. He regularly withdrew from hostile crowds. He maintained his focus. He refused to be derailed from his purpose by the drama of attention-seeking people. And like Jesus, that is what us non-narcissistic people have to do too. Narcissists are all about themselves. And if you aren't prayerful and careful, you will find yourself living your life to please and appease them and whatever they are doing, their purpose, with neglect to your own. Unless God has called you to live your life solely as a support person to someone, don't be forced into it and or feel obligated to give your life to someone and or something as a people pleaser. Yes, people do it. I see it with my natural eyes and my spiritual eyes, and it is not a pretty sight. And God is not pleased with coercion, making people feel obligated and or guilty. How does God punish a narcissist? God is widely believed to punish narcissists not through direct, sudden wrath, but by handing them over to the natural consequences of their own actions. This allows their carefully crafted illusions to collapse. Commonly cited consequences include the truth coming to light. Deceptions are often exposed, leading to ruined reputations and the loss of the admiration they crave. Isolation and abandonment. Their exploitative behavior eventually drives people away, leaving them utterly alone. Spiritual emptiness. The constant pursuit of superficial validation leaves an inner void that no amount of success can fill. What is the narcissist's biggest fear? Beneath their grandiose exteriors, narcissists fear shame, exposure, and loss of control because they build a fragile, false self to hide deep-seated insecurities. Anything that threatens this image, such as failure, criticism, or being seen as ordinary, terrifies them. Their deepest fears are highly interrelated and manifest in several core ways: exposure and humiliation. Narcissists fear being found out as a fraud, weak, or flawed. They dread the moment their meticulously crafted mask slips and others see them for who they truly are. Public shaming. Any situation that publicly humiliates them or proves them wrong is their worst nightmare. Overwhelming shame. At their core, narcissists harbor deep, often unconscious feelings of worthlessness, inadequacy. They are terrified of not being good enough and will do anything to project that shame onto others. Being ordinary. To a narcissist, being ordinary is equivalent to being worthless. Loss of control and power. Narcissists must maintain control over their environment and the people in it to prop up their egos. Independence. They fear others becoming independent, as it signals a loss of control over them. Abandonment. They fear people leaving them, especially if they lose their narcissistic supply, constant attention and validation. Criticism and rejection. Even minor constructive feedback is viewed as a direct attack. Being ignored. To them, Rejection or being deemed irrelevant is deeply threatening because attention is like oxygen. What do narcissists do every day? Every day, narcissists engage in habitual behaviors driven by a need for validation, superiority, and control. While their routines vary, their days universally revolve around managing their ego, manipulating others, and securing attention. A breakdown of daily narcissistic behaviors includes the following core actions. Seeking narcissistic supply. Narcissists constantly require attention, praise, and validation. Every day, they look for ways to be the center of attention. This can take many forms: bragging, exaggerating their achievements, talents, or importance; social media validation, spending excessive time posting, curating an idealized image, and monitoring likes; playing the victim, seeking sympathy or playing the martyr to elicit emotional reactions; exercising control. To protect their ego, narcissists need to feel superior and in charge. They often do this daily by micromanaging, criticizing others' choices, or dictating how things must be done; boundary crossing, demanding that others prioritize their needs, often disregarding the plans or feelings of people around them; information gathering, frequently checking on what others are doing so they can find ways to insert themselves or criticize; manipulation and projection. When they feel threatened or their ego takes a hit, narcissists resort to manipulation. In their daily interactions, this frequently involves gaslighting, making others doubt their own reality, memory, or sanity; blame shifting, provoking arguments and then projecting fault onto others; strategic secrecy, withholding information or giving bogus apologies designed to pacify someone without taking true responsibility; comparison and envy. Narcissists constantly compare themselves to others to maintain a sense of supremacy. Daily, they may demean others, putting down colleagues, friends, or partners to elevate their own status; assume envy, harboring a belief that everyone is jealous of them and their successes. Now, let's look at some people in the Bible that either were narcissists or suffered from narcissism. The Bible does not explicitly use the modern psychological term narcissism. However, it frequently describes the traits associated with it, such as grandiosity, entitlement, and a lack of empathy and pride. Several biblical figures are widely analyzed by theologians and scholars as displaying these exact characteristics. King Saul, driven by jealousy and a need to protect his ego, Saul frequently blamed others, manipulated situations, and prioritized his public image over obeying God. And that's in 1 Samuel chapter 15. King Herod displayed extreme grandiosity. When the crowd hailed his speech as the voice of a god rather than a man, he accepted the praise, resulting in his immediate downfall. And that's Acts chapter 12, verses 21 through 23. Pharaoh of Egypt. showed a severe lack of empathy and entitlement. When asked to free the Israelites, he dismissed God's authority and refused to take accountability, hardening his heart to the suffering of his own people. And that's Exodus chapter 5, verse 2. Nabal, described as harsh and impossible to reason with, he displayed profound selfishness and entitlement, which almost led to the destruction of his household. And that's 1 Samuel chapter 25. Beyond specific individuals, the Apostle Paul directly warns about a culture of self-love and arrogance, describing individuals who will be boasters, proud, and lovers of themselves. And that's 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. Why is it important to recognize narcissists? Recognizing a narcissist is crucial, primarily to protect your own mental and emotional health. Identifying these traits, such as a lack of empathy, a chronic need for validation, and manipulative tendencies, allow you to safeguard your well-being in several key ways. Prevent emotional burnout. Understanding their behavioral patterns helps you set firm boundaries, keeping you from draining yourself to meet their endless demands. Avoid self-blame. Narcissists often manipulate situations to make you feel at fault. Recognizing this prevents you from internalizing their blame and questioning your own reality. Stop the cycle of manipulation. Knowing the signs helps you spot gaslighting, future faking rather, and isolation tactics early on, making you less susceptible to their cons. Let me repeat that. Stop the cycle of manipulation. Knowing the signs helps you spot gaslighting, future faking, and isolation tactics early on, making you less susceptible to their cons. Make informed relationship choices. It allows you to assess whether a relationship, whether personal or professional, is built on mutual respect or purely on what you can do for them. To dive deeper into the dynamics of narcissistic traits and how to communicate safely without losing yourself, you can read more via the American Psychological Association Insights on the Disorder. God does nothing happenstance. God always has a reason for what he does and or what he allows, whether we know what it is or not. God has an agenda, and God's agenda will be done on earth as it is in heaven, no matter who likes it and no matter who doesn't. And today, in this prophetic word and prophetic warning, God is asking us, do you recognize a narcissist when you see one? God is God, and God is God over all, including narcissists. The Bible says in Psalm 105, verse 15, and 1 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 22, touch not mine anointed and do my prophets no harm. And in Philippians chapter 2, verse 10 through 11, Paul writes that at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow in heaven, on earth, and under the earth, and every tongue openly acknowledge that Jesus Christ is Lord. And everybody needs to humble themselves and obey God in word and in deed, in spirit and in truth, without debate and without delay. And God is saying prophetically today. Narcissists, you have now been warned. I hope and pray that this message has been a blessing to you. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you feel led, you can make a donation. Thank you for listening and supporting my YouTube channel. God bless you and just be happy.